Get into it. Thank you. Right. Haere mai, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the service delivery meeting. E ngā mana, e ngā reo. Rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And that's my salute to Māori Language Week. Yeah. And with that, I would really like to invite our new CE, Steph, if she could lead us in a karakia.
Kia ora, tēnā koe Claire. Tēnā koutou e te kaunihira o te kaunihira Arohi o Waipa, e te manakura, Susan, tēnā koe. E te manuhiri, e te kaimahi o te council, tēnā koutou. E noi tātou, just before we say a little prayer, I just want to acknowledge our guest Matthew Cooper in the room and the passing of his father-in-law Paul Fair, who has obviously left a wonderful legacy across the Waikato and beyond. And so may he rest in peace, Matthew, and our thoughts and love are with you and the family. And so let's take a moment and into wiki o te reo Māori, Claire. Nā mihi nui kia koutou, e noi tātou he karakia te matanga. Tū tawa mai I runga, tū tawa mai I raro, tū tawa mai I roto, tū tawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumie uie tae ki. And in English, that says, come forth from above, from below, from within, from the environment, so that vitality and well-being settles upon everyone, strengthened in unity.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you,
Kia ora.
Steph. Now, I'd just like to welcome those members that are zooming in to our meeting. So we've got Roger and Liz and Andrew. Great to have you here. Now, we need to ask you to keep your cameras on during the meeting. It's because we love to see your face, obviously, but there's also a quorum requirement, and governance has let me know that we're quite close to our quorum. Okay, so our preference is to have positive evidence that you're actually in the meeting. So I hope that you can abide by that. Thank you. And before we kick into our meeting, I'd actually like to turn the focus to Dawn, okay, because last week at the Taituara conference, Dawn, you were the focus of some kind of award, I understand. Long service, 40 years devoted to local government. Yeah. So we just want to acknowledge that and pass on our congratulations. Would you like to share with us what you've learned in those 40 years?
Kia ora. Through you, Madam Chair, it's been a fabulous, very rewarding career in local government. It's always a bit scary to put a number on it. I've said to many people, it seems like only yesterday I started as an engineering cadet, but as I say, it's a fabulous career to look back on. Kia ora. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say we're really blessed, fortunate, to have someone of your caliber and experience, I think, with us, helping us through these, service delivery things. Yeah. So I'm great things expected of you. Yeah. Helping you through this. All right, so let's get into it. And we have some apologies. So I've got apologies from Councillor Coles, who's away. Oh, he's actually joined. Oh, okay. Is he actually, I'm just waiting for Philip to appear. I think, Philip, are you there online? Great to see you here if you're able to make it. Okay, I was about to give your apologies, but I've also got Councillor Thomas, his apologies for personal reasons. Then Dale Marie is that personal as well? Yeah, and Hinirangi Kara for lateness. Welcome, Philip. Great to see you here. So pleased that you could zoom in all the way from Japan. Could I just ask you, I instructed the others to kindly leave your camera on during the entire meeting if you can. We're close to our quorum and we just need to have positive evidence that you're actually in the meeting. So I really appreciate it if you could help us with that. So
yep, I'll only be good morning everyone. I'll only be leaving if I need to go to the bathroom or something like that. But I've got.
We really appreciate that detail. Thank you, Philip.
Well, yeah, I've got to probably leave in about an hour and a half. I've still got a couple of hours to drive to Pohoro yet. So
okay. No, really appreciate you making the meeting. Thank you. So now I've
Pleasure.
listed the apologies. Any other apologies? No, cool. So could I have a mover and a seconder, please, that they've got Lou and Monty. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Disclosure of members' interests. Oh, yes, Mayor Susan?
Yeah, look, just for noting, obviously, trustee for Sport Waikato, and there's an item on our agenda in connection with the report that they're providing us today. Obviously, no decision making required in that, but I just thought for the interest of transparency and completeness, I would declare that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm pretty sure we're comfortable with you staying involved in the meeting for that item. And now I've got late items. Any late items?
Oh, sorry, Claire.
Oh, yes, Liz. Sorry,
Yeah,
Liz.
sorry. I was just going to note item 12, the Karapiro 100K flyer, which of course is an event held at Mighty River Domain.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz. We'll make a note of that. All right, so now we'll just go to the late items. Any late items? No. So then could we confirm the order of the meeting? Would someone like to move? Thank you, Susan, and the seconder, Mike. Thanks. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. And now tab 5, confirmation of the minutes of our meeting held on the 20th of August. Now those minutes were pre-circulated, haven't received any comments. So could I have a mover and a seconder that they be accepted as a true and correct record? So I've got Lou and a seconder, please. Oh, thank you, Monty. All in favour, please say aye. Against.
Aye.
Thank you. And then we have the service delivery public excluded meetings. So these are start on page 15. I'm pretty sure. I'm happy to move from the chair actually, and Marcus is going to second.
That was all one resolution.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so
Yeah,
they're
so
both
they
of them.
both-
Oh, okay. All right. Right.
So we've got Mike.
Oh, no, well, I think we'll just take,
Lou and-
yeah, look at Lou and Mike because it was all one resolution. Yeah, thank you. All right, so now into the substantive business of our meeting, and the first item is the Sport Waikato update. So I'd like to invite, their representatives. So, Matthew and Hayden. Cool, great. Yeah, a warm welcome to you both. Great to have you here, and thank you for your report. And I'll hand over to you to make the presentation. Oh, Brad, are you going to?
Yeah, Morgan, I'll just give them a quick welcome an introduction to Matt and Hayden, who probably need no introduction to you all anyway. But again, just tautokōing what Steph said earlier around Paul Fair, one of the original founders of Sport Waikato and chair and trustee for a number of years. So a man of great influence and vision. So just again, acknowledge that, Matthew. So the reason Matthew and Hayden are here is part of our partnership with Sport Waikato. They've got responsibilities to come and present a couple of times a year, just to provide you a bit of an update on where they're at, and also and how they're supporting us through their strategic direction setting and partnering. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Matthew.
Thank you. Ko Matthew Cooper, toke ingoa no tita rāwhiti ahau, no te mata o Māori hoki, e nai nei ko kirikiri roa tōku kainga noho, ko ahau kai whakahari matua o Sport Waikato, tēnā koutou katoa. Just to acknowledge you all, more from your side, Steph, Gisborne born, but very proud Waikato. Waikato now, with a sneaky little bit down in Hawke's Bay for a while, which got a bit lost, but now I'm but certainly through you, Madam Chair, and Steph, thank you very much, and to you, Brad, for those acknowledgement of the passing of Paul Fair. He's certainly a lot involved with our organisation in terms of setting it up with John Parker back in the 80s, and his vision, and it was back then was all around trying to help people to help themselves through movement. And if I reflect in the last couple of days, it's still really important, even though we're in tough times. Movement's so important in terms of our people and certainly the role that we play. So again, thank you. Dawn, congratulations on 40 years. That's incredible. So just to acknowledge you, I'm up there at the moment. That's what my kid, but certainly got a long way to go when it comes to that. So just acknowledge you as well. Take the report as read. Hayden, obviously Hayden is the Regional Connectivity Coordinator for Waipa. There are inside there about 10 specific focus areas over the last six months, which we've really been working closely with Brad and his team. And I acknowledge your team, Brad. I think we really are an organisation that influences, and we want to work with great deliverers out there in the system. And to do that, we need to be working closely with your people around insights and evidence, so we can actually work together on solutions. So that's the key thing. A couple of key things before I pass over to Hayden about the future. We're very fortunate through Sport New Zealand to manage a Tūmanawa fund, and the Tūmanawa fund is obviously where we facilitate its distribution. And in this last 6 months, $158,000 has gone through to the Waipa area, which is really important. That it's got quite a strong lens on those top 4 or 5 codes. Those traditional codes. And so I think talking to Hayden, we're very important that we get applications from other sports as well, and recreation groups, that we can actually, sport and recreation, it doesn't necessarily need to be rugby or football, it can be other codes as well. So we've got a bit of work to do there in terms of how we work with locals around its distribution. But just wanted to talk about that. I go back to, you are in tough times, and appreciate that it's not easy. But again, I think if ever we talk about the importance of movement, and the social return on investment when it comes to sport is really important. And there is a figure of it, for every dollar spent, there is a return, a social return of $2.12, and that relates to health, well-being, volunteering, all those key things. So we value the partnership, and we certainly are very committed to working closely with you going forward. So I'll pass over to Hayden just to talk a little bit around the future.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Hayden Tokaunga. Thank you, Matthew. So progress in the last 6 months, working with Brad and his team on a local play, active recreation and sport plan. So we call it a PARS plan. A little bit delayed just at the moment with regards to the switch over between LTP and annual enhanced plan. The bones of it are there, and that's going to give good guidance to both council and Sport Waikato around agreed action areas with regards to play, active recreation and sport over the coming period. And as Matthew said, also having to acknowledge the tough times that we're in and the tough decisions, and working out where the investment in time and resources is best spent. Another significant change has been the commencement of 2 primary learning partners working within primary schools specifically. So there's 12 schools within the Cambridge cluster and 17 within the Te Awamutu cluster. Currently, a lot of surveying taking place there through a Voice of Tamariki survey that will give a lot of guidance in terms of how we can support children both in and then outside of school, and with in particularly the outside component then linking to where that Tūmanawa funding can be best applied as well. So trying to using evidence to work out where the resources are heading. A couple of other projects there. There's a girls rugby pilot run by the Te Awamutu Junior Rugby Sub-Union across terms 2 and 3. 5 clubs, Ohaupo, Kiki, Te Maris, Te Sports and Porongia. That ran on a Monday afternoon from 4 till 5. Monday afternoons allowed girls in this case who may have been involved with other sports on the weekends to have a dabble and to have a go at rugby. 120 girls enrolled in the pilot. 100% of participants enjoyed it. 87% were interested in playing in a future competition. 87% reporting a current love for rugby. The plan is to run the initiative again in term 1 of 2025 with a view of starting some sort of appropriate competition or festival type structure to support that. Alongside that, a Positive Vibes Only campaign has been unfolded over the last 12 months or so, particularly with rugby union, football, hockey, netball, although other codes and indeed schools are starting to get on board with that program as well. Looking at sideline behaviour and then the impact of sideline behaviour onto players, coaches, referees as well. So trying to connect those up as well. In terms of some of the work that's coming up, is unfolding now. Natural bodies of water, quite a big piece of work that was done there, which is being used straight away with regards to Lake Naroto and the Reserve Management Plan review and update taking place there. In short, It was initially intended, it did morph from what the original scope was. It was initially intended that Sport Waikato and the planned partners would provide a substantial proportion of inventory data. However, early in the process, it became apparent that significant data limitations existed. So across the 10 TA councils, only 500 assets, that water-based assets, were provided across the 10 councils. So emphasis was therefore placed on identifying as many assets as possible. A range of third-party organisations such as Mercury also assisted in providing new data. So 10 councils were able to provide 500 assets, 343 came from Waipa. The reports come back over 5,000 assets that actually existed. So those wouldn't have all been council-owned assets, just to be clear, but clearly in part of the decision-making process, potentially we're only working with, or council were only working with 10% of the information that was out there. So that's, again, already been applied straight away into Lake Naroto, and obviously with a network approach, starts to give good guidance in terms of decision-making.
Yeah. I'm really rapt to hear that that work's been done, actually, Hayden. It's amazing. I was keen to understand when we might actually receive a report on it and whether or not you're going to come along and speak to it about, to us, or what's the plan for sharing that report?
I haven't been directly involved in that. I know the report has been circulated. I think it probably is able to be shared. Something I can take offline. I'm sure we can.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty
clarify
massive.
where
Though.
that's
It's
at.
got 5,000 assets in it. Yeah, but obviously from a Waipa perspective, it'd be good for us to
Yes.
understand what's in it. Yeah.
And the data, one of the questions was, where does that data sit? Who does that sit with? So the regional council has picked that up.
Oh, okay.
And that's again going to give good guidance and good oversight
Yeah.
in terms of what's happening there.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm more than happy to circulate that amongst elected members.
Yeah, thank you.
Pause there.
Yeah.
Just a comment through the chair. Firstly, congratulations, Matthew, on becoming president of the New Zealand Rugby Union back in July. So yeah, awesome to see you there, and they couldn't have got a better person. So yeah, really looking forward to what you're doing there. So okay, yeah, absolutely
We
congratulations.
just got to beat Australia this week.
Yeah.
He's getting plenty of advice on the
Or else it might be a very short term, Mike.
Well, if that doesn't happen, Matthew, there'll be someone under more pressure than you. I'm sure we'll do well. Yeah, hey, just picking up, Brendan, on that partnership, re-engaging with schools, I guess, in a different way, and doing that sort of surveying at the moment. So I think we're sort of part of that. And it's really great from a school point of view to see that direction. Really looking forward to that. Re-engagement with Sport Waikato in that context is going to be really healthy. So yeah, thank you both.
And Councillor, we've got two. I mean, and what I'm thrilled about is the quality of people now. And you've seen them before in the old days in terms, but Anton Barr and Sarah Ryan are very competent subject matter experts, and to work with your key people as well. So yeah.
Cool. So, yes, Lou.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the work that you've been doing. Just something I want to raise that, what we're doing within Te Awamutu, that they're working in the schools, and that we've got 14 schools now that is being attended with people regularly. That's with Ollie and Riley. They're doing quite a good job out there. One of the key problems we run into, of course, is the old adage that you just said, funding. And it's always a massive problem. But as I say, I think that just teaching children at the basic stages of just ball control, just running, jumping, throwing, the basics of sport is a really great asset for our whole community and welfare. It just brings them along, regardless of whether they play rugby or what other sport they play, it doesn't matter. They're just teaching them basic skills. And I think this is really, really important. And I think it's a great program, and it can be, as I say, interchanged and developed throughout the whole of the Waikato.
Absolutely, and I've always been an absolute advocate of what's happening at Te Awamutu Rugby and Sports, and Tūmanawa's obviously been a significant contributor, which we certainly believe in terms of the work that the team are doing at Te Awamutu Sports. We've also looking, and it was in that report, around an opportunity, what we're calling replay. It's work we're doing with the University of Waikato, and we've identified Te Awamutu Rugby and Sports for this as an opportunity, or Te Awamutu, around how do we also understand there's traditional sport the way we play the game. That's Saturday mornings. That's competition is, the competition structure could be 3 to 4 months. We're trying to understand more about what the participant wants. And so it's understanding more. And so this work we're doing with the university, where we wouldn't mind piloting Te Awamutu as a place where it might be that season length is we might challenge around the importance of kids playing sport for 4 months of the year. Can they play a shorter, sharper season, and then maybe try another code? Just those type of things we want to experiment a little bit. It won't be to the detriment of traditional, but we want to try and see if there are other opportunities that can engage youth into playing. And I've always got this great story of a former employee of mine whose son played rugby in his first year, and it cost them to kit him out and to pay fees was $300. He retired after 2 games because he hated the game. But the mum and dad had spent $300 on gear, on fees, on mouth guards, and all this. But could they just have bibs in the first couple of years? Do they need to have uniforms? There's things we're trying to look at to make it affordable, to make it participant focused. Yeah, so this is, and I think the club, I should say, Te Awamutu Rugby and Sports, with its 10 or 12 sports around it, is a great one for us to work with.
Thank you very much for that, Matthew.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, oh no, thank you. Awesome to have this update from you. So I'd just like a mover and a seconder, please. So I've got Mike and a seconder, Lou. Yeah, all in favour, please say aye.
Thank you. Thanks very much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks, Council. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So our next item is the Water Services Activity Report. And I understand Robin, you're going to come? Yeah, it's got Martin Mould down here, but I understand Martin's gone on to greater things. Yeah. So yeah, welcome, Robin, and yeah, over to you for this.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Apologies for those who were expecting to see Martin. Conan's our new waters compliance team leader. He's in his 2nd week this week, so between us we'll make the best stab at answering any questions you may have on the quarterly report.
Yeah, well, welcome, Colin. Nice to see you here. So would you like to take us through the report or just do highlights, or I'm not sure how you want to handle it? Oh, if you just, yeah, that's right. Okay, well, generally we do take the report as read, especially when they're, quite a substantive or substantial length. And I guess we can, if you're quite happy not to have highlights, we could just ask for questions from the floor. I've got a couple of questions myself, so I'm happy to kick off with those. Yeah, okay. So I appreciate that there's a separate item about the stormwater consent. Yeah, but in our report, on page 3 of your report and on page 29 of our agenda, it talks about the stormwater comprehensive discharge for Te Awamutu, Cambridge, Kihikehi, Pirongia and Ōhaupo, and it's sort of in green on that page around the middle. And it talks in the audit comments and actions, so that column on the far right-hand side, it talks about investigating the sources of contamination, that are getting into the stormwater system, and that a preliminary walkover has been carried out and possible sites that could be a source have been flagged. I just wondered if you could share with us whether or not the zoning of those sites is giving you any indication. Like, I presume there might be some industrial or some commercial sites and things like that. That's what I was interested in. I'm not wanting to know if you're sort of homed in on a particular activity or landowner, but just the type of activity that's happening there and what might the contamination be.
We're obviously still operating under our present consent conditions, and there's notionally 4 or 5 outlets that we actually monitor in a heavy rainfall for contaminants. So we're not in the full regime by any means of what the new consent will bring. But this is a sort of an indication of where the new consent will take us, in that Regional are now actually looking at, in a lot more detail, at the sample analyses that are going out. So this particular one was picking, and Conan and I went through the long-term sampling this morning. What zinc, for example, has been at a low level for this particular outlet for a period of time, occasional peaks, some ammoniacal nitrogen as well. So what has been there and been reported for a long time is suddenly now, not suddenly, but they're doing the right thing now and questioning us with regard to where this contaminant is coming from. So this particular one was the Benson Road outlet. So it's industrial sort of commercial area, probably one of the older areas. We would traditionally attribute zinc to galv roots and so forth. And as I say, there has been a consistent zinc reading there at a low level from, we look back about 2018 was the latest one. So that particular miners non-compliance is with regard to the Benson outlet and, as I say, primarily from an industrial commercial area. And yeah, as you indicated, the guys are actually going back and they're taking samples from within that subcatchment to see if we can track it down to a particular source, or whether it is just a generic background from, as we say, zinc could be just from generic galv roots throughout the catchment.
Look, thanks for sharing that. It gives us an insight actually as to what the team's having to sort of, I suppose, yeah, change their approach. Yeah, probably, as you said, it's ratcheting up, yeah, the requirements and yeah, what sort of activities you
A recognition of a greater scrutiny, particularly on the stormwater activity these days.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, Mike.
Thank you. Through the chair. Page 5 of your report, page 31 of ours, just the 3.14, the water activities and initiatives, the drought tolerance campaign. That sounds a really great campaign, very cool. Have we done that in the past? Would be my first question. Or is it a new initiative or not?
Shireen, within Conan's team, is very proactive in coming up with these ideas, and it is part of the longer term water conservation type initiatives that she's been implementing. And this is just another way of tackling that, because as you'll be aware, fortunately, we've not gone into severe water conservation over the past few years. So this is another way of trying to bring attention to water conservation, better water use, etc. So it's not, it is new, but it's not new, if that answers your question.
No, it's just a great initiative. Looking forward to it being launched and having a QR code, of course. I couldn't access it, but when it's live, I'm sure is a great way to be able to easy access what's on there. So yeah, looking forward to that, and I'll promote that around the school district around our way too. Thank you.
Okay, Lou.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Just quickly, just wanted to ask a question about the Pukirimu intake. You said it was corroded. Is that just normal wear and tear, or is that extra corrosion? And has there been any impact with clams or anything on that sort of area creating any problems in that?
Pukirimu is obviously a critical river water intake to us, because it feeds into the parallel road water plant, which then comes to Tiamutu and all of the Pukirimu schemes. So it's one that we do keep regular interest in. I don't believe the corrosion is anything unexpected or unusual, but it's something we're actually monitoring. And with regard to clams, I'm going out on a limb slightly here, but I did hear that we had found some in there, but it wasn't actually of sufficient numbers that it was causing issues, obviously via a few kilometres of pipeline to the treatment plant. And the treatment plant is a membrane plant anyway, so it should be good if they ever got that far.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the Pirongia or Titahi Road water take. It mentions on page 31 of our agenda and page 5 of your report that there's going to be a filtration system installed 2 meters under the stream. Yeah, I just wanted to, is that because as part of that report, it talks about improving fish passage, I guess. Is it related to that or is it just the water take? Yeah,
No,
if
no,
you could just help me out with that. Yeah.
The two are exactly linked with each other. We've obviously got a weir across the stream at the moment, which is causing an obstruction to fish passage, although we do have a very minor fish passage there. And there's a great desire through regional and through stakeholders to remove that weir and allow better fish flow.
Yeah.
So we have been working on what the alternatives are there, because the advantage of the weir is it gives you a deep pool of water. You can actually suck the water which we then put into potable supply. So the filter's probably a wrong word. I would call it an infiltration gallery, but it's basically a perforated pipe beneath the riverbed with gravels on the top so that the water can sink through and we can still harvest water from the stream. But the actual riverbed is still at a natural level so that the fish and the water flow can still go through. And equally with the pipe being under the bed, there's no chance of fish or whatever being sucked into it, which you could do if you actually put an intake on the side of the stream, for example. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a filter because it's not doing a filtration task, but except it is going through gravels to get to the perforated pipe so that we can harvest it. At least that's the present proposal, and we're just working through with the stakeholders to make sure that people are satisfied and happy with that before we go off to implement anything.
Yeah, thanks. That sounds really great, actually. Be good to hear how that goes. Yeah, because I understand that has been really, I mean, we did have a report last month or previously about the concerns about that so Mike.
Sorry, through the chair, just almost on the back of that, and it's a wondering really, just with, and we approved a water intake or a bore for some road construction, the big road a few weeks back, and that's probably a bit further away from the river, but are we doing any work or do we need to do any work around where there is water intake, either on private or council public land, close to that river for these claims, in terms of the claims are obviously in the river, but just hypothetically, is there any work done internationally where can they burrow sideways sort of thing to find other water intakes that they think is better water, or how do they work? Don't know.
Through the chair, honestly, I couldn't answer that question. Everything I could tell to you would be secondhand, like Ngāti Whāriki Kahukura are looking to do some more investigations on the clams in the river there, and they believe that they actually burrow quite deep and a lot deeper than they thought they were. But I'd say I'm repeating secondhand information that
Sure. Yeah. It's just something that, I don't know, something came up and just made one think that actually how close are some of these water takes that don't take directly from the river, and could they potentially be affected and then obviously spread?
Thank you. Now, Luke.
Robin, just one other thing. With the idea that there was a proposal of CoLab actually coming on with stormwater, will that help us with the regional council at all with our consent? Will they be able to help us a little bit in presenting that or not?
Through the chair, I'm not 100% certain which CoLab initiative you're talking about, whether it's the Waikato Waters Done Well or it's the new professional services panel. There's a number of initiatives at the moment.
The number of initiatives. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it just says here that CoLab is looking to introduce a stormwater compliance to their services.
Right.
Okay, which I just wondered whether having that would actually assist us with this, going to regional council.
Through the chair, I don't know of that role or that service, but just from the title, it does strike me it would be of use to our future consent with, like, the Benson Road issue of being able to actually track through where contaminants may be coming from.
Yeah, cool. All right. I just wanted to comment on the compliance charts that give the minimum and maximum response. So that's on page 6 of our report or page 32 of the agenda, because we get those sort of standard graphs and almost pie charts, but they've also added the minimum and maximum response and resolution times. And whereas the urgent ones for an unplanned interruption, the median and the minimum and the maximum, there's hardly any difference. But for the non-urgent one, it ranges from almost 0 to actually 27 days, whereas the median says it's 1 day. So it gives us a bit more clarity about the whole spectrum of response, I guess. Yeah, so I appreciate that that's been put in. It did come up in the Wellington Water reporting, so I raised it with Dawn. So we're trying out this. Yeah, do you want to comment on that, Dawn?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Absolutely acknowledge in terms of we agree it's a valuable data set. What it's identified is that we do have some data issues in this space in terms of how the teams are recording data into our Water Outlook, how that data is then transferred into our customer response CRM system, and then managed through into a reporting framework. So it's a piece of work. The great thing being is feedback from the teams as well is that now that the focus is that we want to understand the data set, they're buying into, yep, how can we do this to make this work well as well? So that understanding of how data is used, making it more valuable to the entire process. So no, great initiative. Thank you.
Through the chair, Colin and I were quite interested in that 27-day one, so we did research it, and it was a one-off. And from the dates the guys had entered, they entered the site in May, yet the report was in April, and they completed the job in April. So it looks like a transposition of months as distinct from an actual 27-day process.
Yeah, I know that's great. That's good, really good feedback. No, thanks, and all the best with going forward. Yeah, I mean, the changes in the way you operated, isn't it? And introducing something new always highlights, other challenges, I guess. And then another question I had was about the stormwater consent, and this is on page 11 of your report, because it says that with the work that you're doing with the regional council, there's been information provided, but then the regional council will likely start the limited notification process in late 2024. I just really appreciate more detail about, so who's likely to be notified? Like, it's a limited notification, so how do you decide who's notified, and what are the expected outcomes of that?
When we first started this process, we were expecting regional to go just an open consultation process, but we have been working through them and with various stakeholders quite significantly over the last 18 months, 2 years. So where we've landed is that the limited notification will primarily be just to the iwi groups, so Te Nene Nene Nui, Maniapoto as it was, Waikato Tainui obviously, Ngāti Kōregi Kaukura and Ngāti Hawa would be the primary parties that they will approach, and that sort of reflects some historic feedback through the Tainui JMA that they didn't feel they had been properly involved at that time.
Oh, okay.
Which was,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
at the moment, we believe regional will primarily just go to the iwi groups.
Right, okay. Okay, no, thank you very much. And because we've got another item about that stormwater consent, I'll leave it there. I just wanted to ask a question next on the same page about the asset management, and it's talking about the renewal profiles that have been updated, and so work's been done there. My question is, has this update identified an increase or a decrease in the urgent investment, that will be needed for renewals? Has it changed your work program or your recommendations? I'm just thinking about our long-term plan budgeting.
Yes, we've certainly do have a number of renewals ahead of us, and we do have asset data primarily on our critical assets, because those are the ones we inspect and take condition data and all the rest of it from. So we have to date been trying to tackle the critical assets first, and we've relatively been successful in that. There is quite a lot now starting to come up with regard to the age profile, of which we'd have no condition data, and we've not really been to because of they've been low criticality.
Oh, right.
So we've tried to reflect in the LTP budgets that age profile. Some of them we could potentially sweat for a number more years, and some we couldn't, but we've just not got any data sets to actually substantiate that for those lesser critical assets that are out there.
So this work is sort of preparing you to be able
It
to
is,
have some
it's-
good data on it.
Very much so, very much so.
Could you just off the top of your head say what proportion of the total assets or total pipes are non-critical or critical, I guess, you know, so we understand how big a data set we're talking about if you're looking at now just the age profile, so non-critical, yeah.
Slightly different for each water service, and I would be purely guessing because we do have a criticality matrix which includes things like, like in the sewers perspective, is it close to watercourses? Any service that goes under railways, is it in a major road? Does it service medical facilities, etc.? So it's
Yes,
difficult to give you a precise
Yeah.
answer to that. I would be purely guessing at maybe 10-20% we would class as critical.
Yeah, okay. No, well, that's helpful. No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sorry to be asking so specific questions. And then my last set of questions is around that Pirongia Road Bridge wastewater pipe replacement. Yes, so I was just checking, is it Pirongia Road or is it Patarangi Road?
This is a personal apology. It's me that's confused that. It's Patarangi Road.
yeah.
It's definitely not Pirongia Road.
Yeah, yeah. I could see how it happened. Yeah. Oh no, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, interesting, the reason for the corrosion. Yeah, but no, thanks for that. And it looks like the work's been done to repair the leak. Yeah, so that, yeah, there's no more contamination happening.
I like to say we know the condition of our assets, but that was a relatively new pipe we had there, 10, 20 years old. It was ductile iron, and we suspect, but we've not confirmed yet, that the Manuka honey coming down is actually quite a very low pH. It's of the order of 3.5. Ductile iron is only good for 4 at the very worst. So we're actually suspecting it's corroded from the inside out, and it was fortunate more than anything that one of our guys actually looked at it one day and thought that doesn't look good. So as I say, based on the age, we wouldn't have gone near it with regard to inspections for a long time. So yeah, it was a fortuitous set of events to actually A, spot it, and then B, to rectify it.
Oh no, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, all right, so that's the last question I had. So are there any questions? I can't see any hands up online, so I'm presuming everyone's happy there. So we can wrap this up now. Thank you very much. I've got a resolution there to receive the report of Martin Mould. I think you did a great job, Robin, stepping into his shoes. So I could have a mover and a seconder, please. So I've got Lou and Marcus seconding. Sorry, Roger, I missed you. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And all right, so is anyone leaving? Because we're moving on to the next item, which is the, yeah, I'm just trying to get to that. So this is the possible impacts and implications of the new stormwater consent. Yeah, gosh, what a great title. Yes, so thank you for your extensive report, and could you just lead us through it? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might just
You're going to introduce it? Yeah,
take the
thanks, Dawn.
opportunity in terms of providing a little bit of background in terms of why this report has been brought to you. You may recall that the Water Services Activity Report in March of this year talked about some of the expected conditions that we were sort of starting to see being required as part of the new consent. And some of those were going to have impacts on our internal business processes within council, how we do our business across our activities, and starting to think about district plan requirements. And some of them also were possibly looking to have a reach into private landowners and how they manage these stormwater facilities on private land, but that council would have a responsibility to start to look at those. So the request arising from that report was to bring a more comprehensive outline in terms of the consent and some of those condition requirements. So my apologies, it was voluminous. in terms of the amount of information provided, but that was the main focus of it in terms of trying to, I guess, give you an insight into, number one, the extensive work that's been done in terms of the consent application, but then more so in terms of some of those insights into particularly those two impacts that are going to be probably front of mind as we start to work through local water done well and how we manage this activity into the future as well in terms of some of its implications and ramifications for council. But I'll thank you, Madam Chair, for that opportunity, but yeah, hand over to Robin.
Okay.
Through the chair, thank you, Dawn. That's much of what I was going to say with regard to the introduction to this paper. I have tried to be probably over detailed with regard to the potential implications of this. And thank you for some email feedback with regard to this. Although it sounds and reads as if there's some severe issues there, we have already started to address a lot of them with regard to, like, for example, the water department redesign actually incorporates now an urban stormwater engineer who we will be recruiting in due course, who will take more focus on, I hate to keep using it as an example, but the likes of the Benson Road issue and also the new consent compliance. And then equally from an LTP's perspective, we have increased some of the operating budgets for things like stormwater operation and maintenance, because they're linked to also backtracking any contaminants when we find them. The new consent is very likely going to have a requirement to prove that present stormwater devices are operating as they were designed to do. So trying to be, rather than at the bottom of the cliff, actually preventing that contamination issue in the first place. So there will be more requirement to actually go and inspect and investigate some of our present devices before they get to the point of failure. I will take the report as read. I've tried to split it into kind of internal issues and then some of the more physical works improvements that we may be required to do in due course. And the physical improvements are linked quite strongly to the catchment management plans, which we've produced as part of the consent submission, which have brought together an awful lot of science with regard to erosion potential, contaminants in rivers, groundwater effects, high risk catchments, and I could go on. Hence the 1,000 and odd pages of the consent submission. There was an awful lot of work put into those, which have been summarised into those catchment management plans with regard to present issues and opportunities to do better, but also potential risks that we may want to mitigate in the future.
No, thank you, Robin. And it's obviously a work in progress as well. It sounds like this is new territory and that your teams are working through this. It's a massive piece of work and that you're working closely with the regional council on it. Yeah, and that we'll probably see more reports in the future. Through
the chair, we've actually responded to the RFI on regionals' questions to us. We did that at the end of August. So we're now just waiting for their feedback and whether they're going to kick off this notification process. We did suggest our own consent conditions, which is the normal way we would do this, but regional have actually indicated on this particular consent that they want to generate their own set, because I'm not sure if we're actually the first cab off the rank, but we're close to the first cab off the rank for the application of this level of scrutiny. So they want to make sure that the consent set is applicable to other councils after us. So Otorohanga, South Waikato, Matamata are all maybe 2 steps behind us with regard to this. So they want to make sure what is applied to one is applicable to the rest, if you like.
Excellent. Now, any questions? Right, I've got Monty and then Lou and then Roger online.
I've just got a couple. First of all, just a question around how we've gotten 2 years past the existing consent. Just if you give us a bit of background on that. I'll do my second one second.
Through the chair, sorry, I'm trying to be polite here. We submitted our consent renewal within time, but then regional council took close to 12 months to actually assess that and come back with any feedback to us. Some of that feedback required us to do some work which was seasonal. So we then negotiated virtually another 12 months to actually respond to that RFI, not because of the quantum, but because of that seasonality of some of the stuff we needed to do, which resulted in a 2-year delay from the submission to where we are at the moment.
And you say we negotiated an extension. Does that mean we're kind of in no man's land at the moment, or has there been an extension of the existing consent?
Because, through the chair, because we submitted in time before our present consent expires, part of the planning process is that you can still continue to operate under your present consent until the new one is negotiated and agreed.
Cool. And second question, this is an urban stormwater consent. Do we have any consent for the rural stormwater that we are in any way responsible for, or is that just considered like a permitted use or something?
Regional Council primarily regulates discharges to watercourses, which is why the urban one is an obvious example of that, is we're collecting roads and who knows what else from the urban area. So that is a Regional Council regulated activity. The rural, I call it rural drainage rather than stormwater, just to differentiate the two, but that's more Land Drainage Act from 1908, I think it is, but it's a very long-standing Land Drainage Act, so it's a legislation more than any a Regional Council issue, although they've obviously got a lot of interest in around the Peak Lakes, for example. They still manage those areas, and also north of Hautapu. But as a district, we've actually taken on responsibility a long time ago for rural drainage across most of the district.
Okay, and so that's proceeding under the Act you referred to,
Yes.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, cool. All right. So Roger, we'll take your question next, please.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Robin, thank you very much. And I acknowledge the response that you've sent out to my questions that I asked, particularly with regard to the discharge consent that we've submitted. It was quite a technical document, and 1,000 pages was, I think, too much of an expectation for us to read and understand. But I do take your point there. But the second part of your answer, which you say this memo outlines the potential effects of the new consent and also some of the present weaknesses in how we holistically manage stormwater. And then you say much of this is already factored into the present LTP. Now that a little bit concerns me, because the fact that you've qualified it by the way much means that there's also a certain amount that we don't know that we haven't included in our LTP. And with that amount that we haven't included in our LTP and the as yet undetermined requirement by Regional Council on the consent, how do we know that we've not got a huge investment that we've got to make that is not included in our current LTP discussions?
Through the chair, there's two levels of answer to that, Councillor. One is the catchment management plans, as I alluded to, have identified opportunities where we could operate our stormwater system better and the risks associated with those. So there is, if you like, we've already identified what the potential work scopes are. Some of those are quite aspirational with regard to planting in reserves, stream restorations. So the way that we've discussed with Regional Council is we are expecting to need to produce a report called an implementation plan, where we pick our highest priority ones and say we're going to do these projects in the next 5 years, and then there will be a rolling thereafterwards requirement to update that implementation plan. So at the moment, my indication that with regard to the LTP is I believe I've put sufficient dollars into that discussion to counter those, I don't want to say highest priority because they're all priority for different reasons, but in a previous workshop with Council, you guided me to address levels of service and flooding first before I went on to the more aspirational ones. So at this moment in time, our draft implementation plan that we submitted primarily tackles projects associated with wet carpets, perceived levels of where we're not potentially meeting our levels of service. And then, as I say, the catchment management plans thereafter go into more environmentally applicable solutions, so capacity first, and then we'll start looking at treatment and ecological effects. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but basically I've tried to incorporate what I believe are the big ticket items. And then on a periodic basis, we're expecting the consent will require us to update those implementation plans, which can then be aligned to future LTP cycles or for discussion and consultation as part of that process.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I'm not too sure it does actually answer, but when you're talking about aspirational projects, are there aspirational projects that are not essentially needed, included in your LTP budgeting?
At the moment, sorry, through the chair, at the moment I've put sufficient in there to address those flooding type issues that we've identified. So like, again, I'm picking on poor Benson Road, but there was always a capacity issue down there. So for example, Benson Road capacity is very likely within one of the projects I would be looking to do. Aspirational is probably a wrong word. As I say, everything in those catchment management plans with regard to work items does have a positive effect and something that we would want to do. It's more how I prioritise which ones to go to first. And as I say, at the moment, I'm going for those with direct levels of service, wet carpet issues as distinct from those that affect the zinc or the treatment of road discharges to rivers. And so it goes down with regard to, yeah, as I say, they're all important for different reasons.
Okay.
Again, I apologise if I've not quite answered the question.
From what you're saying, I think possibly the word aspirational was not the right one to use. It might be a question of priority, but there still is an essential component to the achievement at some time. Now, the other aspect that I'm concerned about is when are we likely to receive the feedback from WRC in terms of their additional requirements on our consent?
That would be an open-ended question. They've given me email feedback that they've received it and they will assess it as resourcing at their end allows. My hope is what we've submitted and what we've suggested will be satisfactory to them, because we have been talking to them throughout this process for the last 2 years, and we've actually changed the way we've presented documentation and what we've done in order to satisfy their questions to date. So I would hope there wouldn't be any drastic changes from what we've proposed and discussed with them when they do eventually come back to give us feedback. So I'm hoping the level of feedback will be of the order of how often a report needs to get submitted, or can you give us a slight bit more detail on a certain aspect, or the way it's presented with regard to a lot of these internal proposals of how we could improve management better. I'm hoping that will be the level of the feedback, as distinct from you need to go and clean up the entire river through Te Awamutu or something really significant like that, because I don't think we're in that territory with regard to what their commentary will be when it does come back.
But as you say, we are the first cab off the rank in terms of this consent application. So you hinted that there may be, because we're the first cab, that they'll try and get through some more onerous requirements that is, in fact, going to present additional resource issues for us. Can you contact them and get some response? Because as we're in the middle of our LTP planning currently, it would be really handy to know if, that the resourcing of that particular consent can be put to bed without any additional claims through our LTP.
Just on that
resources.
point, Roger, I just want to check that I'm not sure if that's an appropriate request. I think there's a process underway with the consent, and I'm sure the lines of communication are open. And I think that we just need to be patient and understand, what the outcome is eventually, which staff will inform us of eventually. I presume I'm just wanting, if Robin, if you could just confirm that my assumptions are correct there, and we'll just have to wait.
Through the chair, yes, there is a formal process, and yes, there is an informal, because as I say, we do know the people in regional very well, and we've been talking to them. So I can certainly make an informal request to see how they're tracking with regard to this.
That would be good, Robin. Yeah.
The actual consent duration we're looking for is of the order of 30 years, though. So these processes that we're putting in place and the eventual expenditure against them is over a 30-year cycle. And I keep talking of this implementation plan, but it's up to us what we put in to say we're doing now and what we will do in the future. So we can, to a certain extent, be masters of our own destiny in regards to that.
Thanks,
thank
Robin.
you.
I'm happy there.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. I'm now going to move on to others who would like to ask questions. Now, Lou, you were in the list, and then I understand.
Thank you very
Monty
much,
was-
Robin. This actually interested me quite a bit. And just in the point 7 of the motion that we've been passing, the increase in scope and frequency of stormwater devices monitoring, maintenance, is expected to ensure that they operate to design intent. Now, at Civil Defence on Monday, the week ago, we actually discussed this, that we are actually seeing in the last reports coming in from Anniversary Weekend and from Cyclone Gabrielle, and a lot of stormwater devices did not operate to their expected maximums or operational levels. So we would expect that in the creation of the new act that they're talking of now for the Resource Management Act, that they will indicate to regional councils that there will be a far stricter regime put in place, which will impact on our consent, of course. And that is something that we have to be aware of, that we will actually have to comply with these particular options. So water gardens, etc., are all going to operate correctly at their ability and maximum abilities. So I do think that that's another thing that could hold up our resource consent, because we know that the government's rewriting legislation. And as I say, hopefully it's not all going to be siloed.
Through the chair, the discussions we've had with regional to date in that regard, obviously a stormwater device has most of them have two purposes. One is for retention and to collection of the stormwater when it rains, and then slow release to the environment, so you cause the minimal erosion perspective. But also secondly, a lot of them have a treatment aspect to them, particularly the green devices of the swales and the ponds, so that and rain gardens, so that they capture those contaminants before they get to the waterways. So my expectation is this frequency of stormwater monitoring and maintenance will be things like going out much more frequently to make sure inlets and outlets are not blocked with leaves, twigs, so that capacity is there, and or in the treatment space, actually making sure that the mulch on top of the rain gardens and the plants have been replaced if they've died, or at least inspecting and ticking off the box, rather than it just being on a maintenance cycle of a rain garden media should be replaced every 5 years, and therefore we'll not look at it for 5 years. So when I talk about frequency, I am expecting a lot of that just to be somebody has gone past and actually looked at something to make sure it is still as we expected it to be, and it doesn't need any ad hoc interference maintenance prior to its scheduled 5-yearly whatever maintenance it might be. So that's the flavour of what I was trying to get to under that point 7. I think when I say operating to design standards, all these things are built to a certain size, shape. It's making sure that that size and shape is still present, and also that there's nothing precluding that asset from operating as it should do.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay. All right. Now, Monty, and then Mike.
Thanks, Claire. Robin, I just wanted to check in, your implementation plan is anticipating to be in 5-year cycles. Our long-term plan this time around is a 9-year plan, but we're really keen that it is a long-term plan, not just a 3-year that gets massively revisited in 3 years. So the projects that you've put into the LTP, are they pretty much covering off what you're seeing for your first 2 cycles of your implementation plan? Or have you mostly just focused on the first 3 years? And
through the chair, what we've tried to do is pick out all the physical activities that the catchment management plans indicated may be needed. So within there, it's if there's a capacity issue, there's a potential for treatment, whatever it might be. So we tried to pick all those out, and we've taken them through a rough filter with regard to what are the priorities, and the flooding level of service was the biggest priority, which is why those have made it to the first few years. But I do have an insight of the big long list. And as I alluded to earlier, the mechanism we've got is how quickly we actually can afford to implement them or want to implement those with regard to the timing. And regional will just, on maybe 5 years, it might be every 3 years. So that's part of the detailed feedback we're waiting on, but they will want a periodic update. So I can include that thought process into infrastructure planning, 30-year infrastructure planning and so forth.
And so those, the things you think are going to come up are in our current infrastructure plans for stormwater for the current 9-year LTP?
I've put sufficient in there for the period of the LTP for my long list, which is more than what is in the implementation plan I've submitted to regional council, yes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks through the chair. Robin, just page 5 of your report there, it just looks like there's a significant increase in sort of the monitoring, sampling, analysis, and the monitoring of all this, which is sort of an ongoing cost, not so much, well, not a capital cost. It's talked about far more locations that we have to look at, apart from just a couple in Te Awamutu and Cambridge, that we need to be taking samples and analysis of, and more monitoring of our existing treatment devices, etc., and producing additional monitoring plans. So is there any additional FTE that we're going to need in the water space for this?
Through the chair, one of the documents that is very likely going to be needed by this new consent is an operational maintenance management plan. We have done the bones of that, but the monitoring bit is one that we're expecting to get conditioned and be a discussion point with regional post that the consent getting granted, hopefully. The high level aspiration they're trying to get to is that we're not relying on discharge locations as being the failure of a discharge being the trigger to do anything. So they're not necessarily going to look to sample every outlet, because that is literally end of the pipe type thought processes. What they're trying to do is bring it back up the treatment train so that an issue doesn't occur at the outlet. And that's where, as I talked about a moment ago, it's ensuring that those stormwater assets are still there, still working properly, so that you prevent the issue rather than getting an issue and then having to backtrack up the treatment process. And again, Port Benson Road, that's an example of where we've had an end of pipe issue, and we're now doing a lot of sampling. Well, not a lot, but we're doing 2 locations to try and backtrack up that treatment train of where that contaminant may be coming from, so that we can actually sort the root cause as distinct from having no idea whatsoever.
Right, thanks for that.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Marcus?
I thought it was a really good report, and it was quite interesting reading the Te Miro Water report. And I feel that I've got a much better feel for our wastewater and stormwater and the ecology of what's in our streams and the rivers, like little streams and rivers around Kiki and Prongia and what's in them. And it was, yeah, it was awesome reading that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions. The first one is on page what page is that? 43 of the report, it's the potential wetlands in and proximity to the Te Awamutu urban area. Yeah, and I just wanted, and obviously there are potential wetlands also identified in other parts of the district, but I noticed that those wetlands are actually outside the boundary, of the urban boundary of Te Awamutu. Why are they called potential wetlands? Like what is the plan for them? They obviously are connected with the urban area, but they seem to be outside of it. Yeah.
Obviously, there's the NPS on fresh water with regards to protection of wetlands, and there has been an interest on the receiving environments for our stormwater. So the wetlands are being treated a bit like a river or a stream, as in they're a receiving environment, as distinct from being part of our treatment process.
All right.
And the potential bit is we've done a desktop analysis of where we believe our stormwater is ending up, rivers, streams, wetlands. We've not, particularly with regard to the wetlands, ever truth tested that on the ground. So we, as I say, from a desktop basis, we believe they're probable, but without going to farms to actually see what they are, we couldn't confirm that. And equally, that would be an encumbrance on the landowner if we suddenly said there's a wetland there. So it's to give us a feel of where our stormwater was ending up, not necessarily as part of any of the treatment process itself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks. That's really helpful. And then the last question I had was on page 3 of the report, and it's so these are the points about the listed gaps for improvement, and number 5 is enhancement of the bylaw to be more prescriptive for unacceptable occurrences and behaviour, not just have fines imposed. Would you be able to give me some examples of what alternatives might be wanted, I suppose, new powers that you might want to have if you find that there's an unacceptable occurrence?
I couldn't give you specific examples. The way we've generated this list is that we went around all the different departments in councils to see what their frustrations were with holistic stormwater management. And part of the feedback that came back was the bylaw jumps you to really hard legal fines, whereas from a compliance perspective, we hit it more from an initial education perspective. And there were, but equally the bylaw wording was not as detailed as it could be about what constitutes a fine, what's a warning, or whatever it might be in between. So there was insufficient detail in the bylaw to say this is a fine event, this is an education event, or this is something in between. So it was just clearing up what would trigger one response or another, and actually trying to link those more closely with poor behaviour, whether it be blocking overland flow paths or whether it be filling in retention devices or whatever it might be. But it's all causing a nuisance to your neighbour. It was trying to bring more clarity of what potential triggers would then be linked to a certain outcome or a response from ourselves. So, as I say, I can't give you specific examples, but that there was the general feedback was the bylaw was insufficient with regard to giving you due process to go track down one track and not another one.
Yeah, by the sound of it, the intention is to be pragmatic about it, collaborative.
100%.
Yeah, like we're moving into new territory really, where there's higher standards and expectations or obligations. Yeah, for people that have got stormwater devices, it's going to increase, and therefore you're not just looking to find people, you want to work with them, hopefully, and try to resolve stuff.
An example of that is Riverhurst Gardens down here. I was driving past one day, and the guy had been mowing his berm, and he'd put all his grass clippings in the rain garden because he thought that was a good thing to do to stop the weeds. All that's done is added nutrient to the rain garden and has blocked it up. So that was a case of we've gone and educated him of that's not a good thing to do, and we're now going to have to do something about it, because rain garden is there for a purpose. It's not just a community garden and you don't want weeds in it. So there's definitely an education aspect to it. But if he would continue to do that, it's how quickly do we get to an enforcement type action? And
Okay.
it's trying to bring some sort of measure to that rather than it being one end or the other, trying to put something in the middle, if you like.
Thanks. I think it's been a really valuable discussion actually, and really appreciate the extra detail that you've been able to give us on this. So now I've got a resolution. I'm hoping that no one else, oh, yes, sorry.
Happy to move. And can I just say, I actually liked having the 1,000 pages. Obviously, I didn't read it. I'm really discerning in what I read now. But it was good to see what a Waipa application looked like. And just even reading the contents page I found useful. So.
Yeah, and like for me, I jumped into various parts of the district that I've got a special interest in. Yeah, so I did appreciate the full document. So Monty, I'm hoping that you're moving the resolution. Thank you. And do I have a seconder? I think Lou, you nodded, so sorry. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried, thank you. Now, I'm sorry we're running behind time. Thank you, Robin. And now our next item is the local water done well, and we have Sharon Patterson come to join us. Welcome, Sharon. Nice to see you here.
Good
And,
morning.
another meaty report from you. Yeah. Yeah, so this is on page 100 and 1,184. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Over to you.
Good morning. So this is this report's just giving you an update on our local water done well PGG meeting that we held on the 28th of August. The appendix attached of what we took to the meeting, so you've got a full agenda there, as well as the minutes from that meeting we've attached for your information. So I suppose local water done well, it's certainly moving at pace, as you can see from the documentation in there. A key report that we took was our current state report to the PGG meeting. This is a pretty comprehensive report on where we're currently at in regards to assets, consents, level of service, financial, and just to really put just to sort of give an outline, I suppose, that this is where we are now, so that we've got that. That'll help feed into our water services delivery plan later down the track when we get there. Legislation wise, so the Bill 2 has now been enacted on the 3rd of September. So from the 3rd of September, we've got 12 months to do our water services delivery plan. So we are working hard towards that. Bill 3 is still expected to be introduced in December. We're yet to sort of see any more information on that. But in regards to comms, so we had a good discussion around comms at the PGG meeting, and it was identified as a very high risk that we need to ensure we get our community buy-in throughout this process, that we need the community to understand what was before, like our water reform, and what we've got coming up with local water done well, and the difference between those. You know, before it was very much central government driven, we had to do it. Now we can look at our options in regards to what we want to do. So it's really making sure that we take the community along on the journey with us throughout this time. The other thing just to note, I suppose, in the milestones table in this report, we've got the viability and sustainability assessment report. We were going to present that to the PGG on the 27th of September. We're just trying to align our financial information with our LTP into this report. So we're actually going to provide Martin Jenkins with the latest financial data from the workshops done last week with council, and make sure we've got the most up-to-date data that we've got, so that we're getting two sets of data with the same information. So in regards to that, we're now going to present that report to the PGG on the 11th of October. And we'll look to do a council workshop where Martin Jenkins and Becca will come in and discuss that report with elected members on the 29th of October. So we don't want to push it out any further. We think it's really important that this piece of work is completed and is fed back in these to meet our overall timeframes. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions? Oh, I've got Roger with his hand up. Roger, I'll let you go first.
Thank you very much. Great reports. I thought the current audit of water usage was absolutely fascinating, and I particularly little bit concerned when we look at the average consumption of drinking water per day per head of population comparison with other councils. And I mean, we've got down at 200 litres per day, which I thought that was reasonable. But then when you look at others, which is 950 litres per person, does that have, those high per person usage, does that have any relation to the challenges that they have through water loss, which they're then using to calculate the total water out, which includes the water loss, to get the high consumption data? Any idea?
So I suppose each council is a little bit different in regards to their water loss, and that I think we're in a pretty good place with our water loss, as the current report shows. We haven't got a high water loss, and that's actually come down in recent years with renewal work, and that's been done. But yes, every council is different, and without actually digging into that background information, I can't
All right.
really answer that question.
It just worries me that, when you look at going into a mega entity CCO, that some of the challenges that some of them have got in terms of their water consumption and their water management is going to be quite a high cost factor. Another question I've got, and that's really looking at the minutes. One of the options that had been floated was that Waipa does its own CCO, and I'm not seeing any discussion on that as an option in the minutes. Has that now been discounted as an option?
So through the chair, no, it certainly hasn't been discounted. So at our next PGG meeting on the 27th of September, we've actually got a report going there looking at the various options as per our project plan. And we've done some analysis work on those options. So the service delivery it'll go to the PGG first, and then it'll come back to service delivery in October, where you'll see all those options as per the project plan.
Right, and one of those will be a Waipa CCO.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Now I've got Lou with a question.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Excellent report. Great reading. The issue I want to ask is we talk of 2 waters or 3 waters, and this is something that worries me from a point of view. 3 waters actually operates in a different environment to 2 waters, quite different. And the overlap between different councils, for example, if you're upstream, particularly of one area, it will affect you downstream. Okay, but it might not necessarily be a partner for 2 waters. So what are the chances of us actually going ahead with a 2 waters agreement and a separate 3 waters agreement, or a stormwater agreement, or vice versa, still staying with the 3 waters? What are your thoughts on that?
So we took a memo to the PGG, and that is in this report around 2 waters, 3 waters, and those options. The PGG asked that we actually come back, have some more discussions across council with various groups, development, engineering, transportation and waters, around the staffing aspects, especially and the resourcing, if water stays within council, if it goes out. So we're currently just taking those findings and putting them into another memo, which will go to the PGG meeting this month. Potentially, I suppose you could go 2 waters and contract to the CCO for stormwater. And I think probably at this time that would be a good option. But yeah, we'll take that information that we've collected and feed it back through the PGG meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that, because as I say, I come from a different environment. We're working with things like civil defence, where flooding is quite an issue, and it affects across borders at times, which are quite separate or disparate to something that we might agree with 2 waters on.
It's how we're going to collect the revenue. Obviously, with stormwater, it's more challenging, I think, if it's in a CCO, where if it stayed within council and contracted back, we would just pay the CCO to manage that service.
Thank you. Now, Mike.
Thanks through the chair. Just looking at this comparison to other councils' graph on page 12 of our report and page 8 of yours. Really interesting graph from my perspective, just particularly when you're talking CCOs. Yeah, I'm sure it's a graph that would be of most interest when you're delving down into the cost and who you jump into bed with potentially, if we do with other councils, and just what needs doing where, just looking at how much pipe work is in poor condition in some of these councils, and also the percentage of the way through, percentage of life is left. And looking at this, I can't help but think, Waipa ratepayers, we're looking pretty good, looking at that graph. So it does show that we've invested well over particularly recent years.
Thank you, Mike. And in fact, that was one of the reasons that the project control group asked that this kind of detailed information, is going to be available for us, because it's going to really help us make the decision, I think. Yeah. Thank you. So any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Sharon. Yeah, really appreciate that, and looking forward to future updates. So I have a resolution that the Service Delivery Committee receives the report from Sharon about local water done well. So happy to move that. Thank you, Mike. And a seconder. Liz is going to second. Thank you, Liz. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to go to contracts signed under delegated authority. And I think you're going to speak to that, aren't you, Dawn? Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This month, just the one contract. This one's related to a consent condition for the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant. And basically what we've done is, in terms of the implementation of that consent condition, we've created a formal agreement in terms of the longevity and the sum involved. So that's why that one appears in front of you today.
Okay. Any questions? Happy? All right. I've got Lou happy to move, and we've got a seconder. Mike's going to second. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Carried. Thank you. And next item is the Targa New Zealand Rally request for temporary road closure. And we've got some lovely ladies coming forward. Janet and Marion. Jennifer and Marion, lovely to meet you here. And we'll let you to speak to this report. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 3 reports that we've submitted for temporary road closures. So the purpose of the report is to seek approval for those temporary road closures. There's 3 events. I trust you've read these reports. We've got the Targa New Zealand 2024 rally, which is happening in it's Labour weekend, 26th and the 27th of October. We had 3 objections to that event, and all the information that we've tried to include in this report in regards to what those objections were, and also the response, the dialogue between the objectors and the event organisers to try and resolve those issues for the objectors. And so we think that the organiser has done as much as they can to provide the access that the objectors have asked for. So we are asking for approval for that temporary road closure in this report.
Thank you. So I really appreciate you providing us with all that extra information with that shows the communication that's been held between the objectors and the organiser. And yeah, I'm just opening it up to the committee. Has anyone got any questions, concerns? Are you comfortable with what's proposed?
Yeah, look, I appreciate the objections, and they are valid for those folks, but I'm also comfortable with the responses in terms of how they've really done their best to mitigate this, and I think it's fair and reasonable. So yeah, at some point I don't mind moving that Targa one.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Lou?
having actually been involved with it and with the Tiger Rally many years ago, they actually always cease any racing or anything if there's an emergency. Ambulances, police, and all of emergency services always have priority at all times. And all of the checkpoints and main part are in communication with mobile operations, not phones. They're actually a separate mobile unit. So I would second your operation if you fit.
Yeah, so those concerns about not being able to get the road opened up for a particular emergency it seems that it can be achieved in short
What
notice.
they do normally is at the end of every road, they will have a marshal who is in communication with both ends. So if there's an emergency, he immediately calls and they cease all start paths. You would have to go, the car's on course, we had to proceed, of course, but they then halt everything else.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what they do is a clearing car comes through with its flashing lights on, and then you can follow them out. And usually that would take no more than 5 to 8 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, and I think there was a response from the organizer to say that even the racing cars themselves, they are contactable, and if they get an alert, they stop immediately. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I do have, so did you second that, Lou? Yeah. So Mike's moved it and you've seconded. Okay. And with that extra information, which appreciated, I put it to the committee. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. All right. So that one's dealt with. So
Well, I
that's
just want to
great.
add that when it comes to any event, any road closure, whether it's an event or we do undertaking roadworks, it's always the case that emergency services have immediate access to that road in the event of any emergency. So it's always the case, yeah.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you. So that's that one dealt with. And then our next one is the Karapiro 100K flyer. And that looks more straightforward.
Yes, nobody objected to that one. It's pretty much the same as last year.
Okay, so it's been.
I'll move.
So Roger's going to move, and do we have a second? Marcus is going to second. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried, thank you. And then the last one is the 2024 BMX New Zealand North Island titles.
It doesn't really impact anybody at all. It's kind of just I'm not saying a dead road, but it's just, there's no
Not through traffic. So I've got Marcus has moved, and do we have a seconder?
Sure.
Oh, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you,
Thank you.
ladies. Yeah.
Thank you so
Are you
much.
happy? All right, so that brings us to the end of our agenda, and I'd just like to get the closing karakia said, and I'm not sure if the protocols are that the person that opened with the karakia is the one that closes, or now that we've got Hina Rangapara here, that she might like to do it. Steph, I'm going to be guided by you.
Happy to do it. I want to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Hinarangi.
A tēnā tātou e te whare, kei ino i tātou. Whakairia te tapu kia wāte ai te ara, kia turu ki whakataha ai, kia turu ki whakataha ai. Haumi e hui e tāi ki e. Kia ora mai tātou.
Thank you, everyone. So that brings us to an end now. We're having